for all of our listeners and all of our partners to tune in. We are excited again to host to you the Fresh Start Show. And we are excited that you're listening in this morning. And shout out to all of our brothers and sisters who may be listening to us right now in prison. We just want to send some love, send some positive energy your way, and some prayers your way to keep on keeping on, never to give up, don't quit. You'll be getting out soon for many of you. This is a good time for you to be getting yourself together and getting yourself prepared for your new life that's waiting on the outside of prison. And we are excited for all of our brothers and sisters who are looking forward to being released soon and coming out soon. There's a brand new life ahead of you. There's a brand new future ahead of you. And we most definitely are delighted to have you tune in on today. Again, you always hear me say, get your coffee, get your Fruit Loops, get all what you need, because it's the Fresh Start Show. And we're looking for a good time on this episode. Good morning, Tom. You are in the building.
Good morning, and good morning to Tucson and Pima County, and welcome to the Fresh Start Show and the opportunity for you to get information which helps you move forward, whether you are incarcerated or whether you have been released from incarceration, or whether you are related to somebody who has been incarcerated or released from incarceration. The resources that we offer help us move forward with jobs, housing, but especially it's the legal aspect. And we're asking people to get their paperwork together. We're asking people to make sure they are organized so that we can start getting them ready for a future that they don't have to keep looking over their shoulder and looking back at their past every time somebody brings it up when they go for a job or for housing or anything like that. So please be on top of your game. If you're in there in the joint right now, men and women that are getting ready to go out 6 months to 18 months, start preparing yourselves. Start getting ready. Start writing the letters that you need to write to the DMV so you can have a license, to Social Security so you can get a Social Security card. All of those things that you can get done prior to getting out puts you 6 months ahead of everybody that doesn't do it when they get out. And I mean at least 6 months. Because we're ready, and like we're talking about doing placements before you even get out. So it's like we're moving forward at a rate that is beyond my comprehension. I think it's beyond Dr. Holt's comprehension, because it's just building and it's growing, and there's more people getting on board, and there are so many people that are being blessed through the opportunities that are offered through Fresh Start. It is changing lives at a just a rapid pace that's very, very cool, but it's also changing hearts and minds of the people that make the policies and the procedures which guide our future in the prison systems and in the release system and in the reentry system. All of those things we are trying to make an impact on, because if we can't change the sentencing code, and if our state legislatures and our governments want to continue this punishment, that we're truth in sentencing and mandatory sentencing and stacking sentences and all of those things, you're not giving a person a chance to make a mistake a life lesson. You're making that mistake a life sentence. And for many of us, we can't walk away from that life sentence ever. So it's a continuous work that we're doing to get more people on board. But here's the thing. There are people that are recognizing the fact that what put us in prison is something that may have been beyond our control, because of the fact that when we have suffered traumas, and we have suffered compound or complex traumas, they exacerbate the original problem. And you move from there into a depth of just being in the basement of what people think of you, how you feel about yourself because of everything that's been said, everything that continues to be said about you. You need to get it together. You need to start to understand those things and journal. Oh my goodness, it just, into my head. Journal. journal, because it is so important that you start to do a timeline of your life, and that you can start to move past the things that have happened in your life. And when you start to write them down, you're going to find that it's pretty cathartic. It's like a therapy. When you sit and you start writing down from your earliest childhood memory, start to journal your life experiences, those things that were against you, those things that hurt you, those things that helped you, those things that helped you grow. You know, your parents, how did they parent? Your brothers and sisters, how were they as brothers and sisters? And move through that, and so you can work your way into a strength and a foundation of having the knowledge of where you grew up, how you grew up, why you grew up the way you did, why you reacted to the traumas that you experienced because of the way you grew up. And when we start to understand that we may not have the best capabilities for dealing with things that are beyond our comprehension at an early age, then we start to understand, okay, now at an elderly age, I can look back at this and I can start to understand why this happened. I can start to understand that I can move past this. I can start to understand that I have a future and that I am worth it, and that each one of you, male, female, in the prison system, out of the prison system, part of the correction system, you are worth it. You are worth all of the people that we work with on a consistent basis, taking the time out to make sure that you have a future. They say at the orientation every week, you know, the parole, you know, we shouldn't have to work harder than you at you staying free. And here's the thing, I will work harder than you, because I want you to be free. Because I know a lot of you are still thinking, you know, this is my lot in life. I'm going to get out. I'm going to violate. I'm going to go back. You know, I'm going to get out. I'm going to do another crime. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get out. I'm going to get a domestic violence because of all of the arguments and all of the separation. And I'm going to go back because this is my lot in life. Because, you know, what is it? 3 out of 10 will go back in 18 months. And it's like nearly 60% go back within 5 years. So, I mean, the rates are just incredible because people are not taking the opportunities that are being offered to them. Here's the thing. We get resources just all over the place. In Phoenix, we had like 75 tables of resources. Down here in Tucson, there were like 50 tables of resources. And that includes like housing, behavioral health, jobs, all of those things. If you're not willing to take advantage of the things that are going to advance you, then, you know, you're going to go back. You know, and if you got an attitude about doing the things that are going to make you successful, like laying the groundwork and building a foundation for a life that is not only going to sustain you, but it's going to sustain you, a partner, and a family, which, you know, we want you to have a family. We want you to go back to your own family and to reconcile with them and to rebuild those relationships that you have, you know, we have, you know, damaged over the years. We are very consistent at being able to alienate the people that care about us the most. And if we would start to recognize that the people that treat us the best, we treat the worst, we could probably take a step back and reconsider how we're treating people. We could probably take a step back and maybe take a course or a lesson or just advice. I mean, go to TikTok, go to Google, go to whatever you got to go to watch commentaries, to watch educational, vocational, those training courses that are going to help you mature where we previously were not mature. You know, because when trauma happens, it emotionally stunts your growth. And here's the thing with the emotional stunting of the growth. And I've said it repeatedly on this show. When you see a 20, 30, 40-year-old man and he's throwing a tantrum like he's a little child and you're saying, what is wrong with this guy? Take a step back and say, when did it happen to him? And why didn't he ever deal with it? Because this is something coming out that happened many, many years prior, because the tantrum that the individual is showing is probably related to the age group in which the trauma occurred. And for me personally, I call it an emotional retardation, where you actually stop growing emotionally in a certain area because of what has happened to you, because of a trauma that has happened. And it may be real and it may be perceived. You know, I mean, we've talked about it previously on the show before, that I had to take the opportunity to explain to family members and my mom, while I was still in prison, that when I was growing up, I had a deep-seated resentment and hate for my family and for my parents because they didn't protect me from being molested. But they had no idea that it was occurring. I never told anybody about it until way, way later in life. So how could they do anything about it with me not opening up and telling them about it? And I was just talking to Dr. Holt about the fact that we need somebody to turn to. And I didn't have somebody to turn to. I didn't have a priest, a pastor. I didn't have a family member. I didn't have, anything to turn to because I was scared and I was a little kid. And you know what happens to that little kid? He bundles everything up inside and he just puts it in a box, man. And that box just keeps growing, and then trauma builds on top of trauma and the box just keeps building. And it's like that Jack in the Box, man. Eventually, you're going to hit that spring that opens the top and everything's going to come pouring out, and sometimes it comes pouring out in really negative ways. And sometimes it comes pouring out in beautiful ways, but for a lot of us, for a long time, it poured out in really negative ways and hurtful ways. And we hurt family, we hurt friends, we hurt people we didn't even know. And we changed atmospheres and environments because of our behaviors, because of our attitudes, because of the way that we acted. We changed people's lives. We changed people's futures. And we need to recognize that. And we need to work on the fact that we need to change our own futures. And we have the opportunity to do that. And working with Fresh Start and working with Dr. Holt has been just such an absolute joy for me, because we consistently see people moving from a point of anxiety, depression, apprehension, lack of confidence in what the message is. And when you are able to direct them, you are able to assist them, you are able to place them before a judge or an attorney or a counselor who is effective in their life, it's life-changing. And it's not only life-changing for them, but it's life-changing to all the people that are looking on. And here's the thing about looking on. At some point, you're going to have to participate, because we're calling people that we are helping to participate after they've been helped. Because the one thing that we know is lived experience is lived experience. We cannot write a book and tell somebody about what prison is like if we've never been there. You can tell people how you've seen it on the television. You can tell people how you've seen it on the movie theaters, but is that the real? No, it's not the real until you are there and you are experiencing the absolute and complete loss of your right to have free movement. Yeah, you can get up and go to the bathroom. Yeah, you can do a lot of things but they still control the outcomes. And when you allow somebody to control your outcomes, you're letting them rent space in your head and occupy all of that space in your head, and then you can't think of anything else except the traumas that put you where you are. So that emotional retardation that happened when we first got traumatized at an early age, we have to grow from that. And when we come back from that at an older age and we start to deal with the things that have come before, that made an impact on our life, that made a scar on our life, that opened a wound in our life and may still be open. But when we take the time to go back to that time and move forward from there in a healthy way, not in a way that suppresses everything and puts it in that box, waiting for that TNT box to explode. No, we deal with it. And when we deal with it, we're able to emotionally grow where previously we had no chance of being emotionally mature because we didn't deal with any of the traumas and we didn't go past the age. If I was molested at 5, at 5 years old, I was emotionally traumatized. At 7, I was emotionally traumatized. At 12. So at all these times in your adolescence when you suffered these traumas that were not your fault, okay? Take the time to go back to that moment and let's move forward healthy. Let's not move forward keeping it down inside and locking it up in a box, man. Let's open our mouths and start talking about it, because when you open your mouth, you give somebody else the courage to open their mouth. And that's what Dr. Holt does, man. He helps people with the trauma that keeps you, it stops you from taking that pipeline that goes directly to either suicide or prison or just depression and anxiety. And let's take the time to deal with the things that put us in the place, that put us in the place, that put us in the joint. And when we do, we can move forward into a future and give other people a future around us, because we are moving into that future more healthy, with a better frame and a better foundation to work with. And that's what Dr. Holt's talking about with the trauma centered, with doing these trauma seminars in the prison. We could start dealing with those issues now before you get out, so we can start dealing with the triggers that you are going to have when you get out. And it's so beautiful to see Dr. Holt work, to see him talk about it, and to hear his voice talk about the traumas that he's never personally experienced, but he put himself in the place of personally experiencing those things in a way that made me believe that he had. And that's incredible to me. And that we need to deal with what we need to deal with in order to move forward into a future that doesn't have all of that in it.
Yes. It's really important that we hit those areas of trauma, because those are really a lot of the root causes to many of societal issues. People that know my work now, I'm pushing that trauma now is a new public health emergency in America.
It is.
When we look at homelessness, the root causes goes back to trauma. When we look at addictions and substance abuse, fentanyl, opioids, people are self-medicating because they're using drugs to help them cope with a root cause of trauma that happened when they were younger.
That's right.
When we look at people who made bad choices and committed a criminal act, a lot of that goes back to trauma. People that say, you know what, like I need to put food on the table and I don't have a job, so I may have to do some carjacking. I may have to do some shoplifting. I may have to do whatever it takes to put food on the table. But that comes from a lot of trauma. Gun violence, safety violence, community violence, public safety, incarceration. Many of these issues goes back to the root cause of what we call trauma. Let me tell you, trauma is a matter of public health now. And when we are looking in this issue of incarceration, there's a strong alignment between trauma and incarcerated populations. Not just their own personal traumas, but the trauma that comes from living in a cage for 10 and 20 and 30 years, institutionalizing mindsets, to even though they may be out of prison, but still emotionally and mentally, they're still in prison. Yeah. They still carry the culture of prison. They still carry the danger of prison. So yes, I'm glad that, Tom, you brought this up about the traumas. Because if we don't heal from our traumas, we will bleed on people that didn't cut us. And so when we're looking at different issues of trauma in our communities, different traumas in our families, different traumas in agencies and incarceration, the trauma is certainly real. But this is the good news. Despite of how real trauma is, your healing is even more realer than the hurt. Let me say it again. We know hurt is real, but let me tell you something that's even more real than the hurt, and that's the healing. Yeah. And there is healing when it comes to this thing called trauma. And you can have a brighter future, even though if your past has been a little dark. And so it gives us hope that despite what we have experienced and been through, we can abound. We can rise above the ashes of our brokenness and the ashes of our troubles and shift from trauma to triumph. And so I want to encourage those who have experienced some brokenness and some pains, but you can heal. And the good news is you can heal even after prison. You can tear down those walls, those defense mechanisms that have been in place to help you cope with prison. And now that you are coming out or you are already out, there's hope that you can switch that light switch back on and build attachments with your loved ones and attachments with those that care about you. But we got to do better. We got to do better in the prison system. We have to do better when it comes to mental illness and getting people who are incarcerated the mental health support that they need, making sure they're getting their psychiatric evaluations and their mental and emotional assessments that they may need so that they can mentally and emotionally be fit for the outside.
That's my question for you, bro. Is we talk about regulation all the time.
Yeah.
And to get regulated. But you got a guy in prison that just went through trauma, the whole trauma of going through the process of the legal system, and now he's being sent to prison. And in prison, how do you get regulated to where you can start working on this now before you get out? And how can I do something to get myself regulated so that I'm not experiencing compound complex on top of each other because I can't deal with people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say if facilities do have a program that support mental illness, you need to take advantage of it. You need to be seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist, seeing a psychiatrist that can help you on some of that too. There's some life skills that you can develop. You know, we can teach you how when you're getting anxious or you're feeling paranoia, right? They get you into that space of fight or flight. You know, there's you can practice mindfulness, meditation. You can also do yoga. I mean, there's all kind of things you can do to bring self-regulate, even breathing, doing breathing techniques that's outside of therapy, because most definitely you will not be able to have a therapist with you 24/7. So you better know how to have some steps, to calm your autonomic nervous system that's hyper aroused, that keeps you out of that fight or flight. Then you need a support network. So having some group sessions, far as different people that's some churches coming in, ministries coming in that's offering some services. Don't just sit in the cage and like I got it. No, if you got ministries and churches coming in offering you some services, or behavioral health that's contracted offering you some services, don't sit there and try to battle this battle alone. Take advantage of those ministries and those organizations that's coming in to help you to have self-regulation, things of that nature. So all of that is important, because at the end of the day, not only does it impact you physically and impacts you mentally and emotionally, but it impacts you physically, right? You get sick. You have chronic disease. You have chronic pain. You have inflammation. You have autoimmune diseases. That all those things turns into, if we cannot turn that trauma stress off the body. So it's not just the mental and emotional. It's also the physical. It actually just makes you physically sick.
And that's why the Department of Corrections and the Bureau of Prisons is spending so much on medical. That's why there's an injunction against the ADOC over medical, because they have so many people that are going through it, bro, and they have no understanding of how to deal with it.
Yes, and we run out of time, but maybe we make this an episode. But I also want to talk about the horrible nutrition that also keeps inmates dysregulated too. That horrible food, that processed food, that's not wholesome foods, have a lot to do with behavior. So you can't feed, humans like animals and then be mad you get animal behavior. We also got to be assessing what we're putting in the body.
That's right. That's right.
So we got to come back and do something on the nutrition that's also contributing to those behaviors.
Yeah, and how they can help their own nutrition while they're in there in some way to try to level that out or balance it out so that we can make a difference there.
All right. So we'll do that. So we run out of time, but I want you to know we're doing a Christmas giveaway with Goodwill. That's going to be December 21st. This next month from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. is going to be at the Goodwill. So meet us there, 1940 East Silver Lake, Tucson, Arizona. So we're going to be there. So we're looking forward to seeing you. Thank you for joining us, and We look forward to having a wonderful, fresh start. Take care.